Good evening, everybody. My name is Amalia Weber. I'm the program specialist here at Rochester Hills Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's program, Moving into Mindfulness. Before we get started, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping details. Firstly, tonight's program will be recorded and available to view about 1 week from tonight on our YouTube page and on the RHPL website shortly after. We ask that audience members please silence or turn off their cell phones before we begin in order to avoid any disturbances during the presentation. Our next program is The History of the Negro Motorist Green Book, which will be an in-person event on Tuesday, May 9th at 7 p.m. You can sign up for that at calendar.rhpl.org. Now please welcome Carol Ann Kettleson.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Carol Ann Kettleson. I'm a member of the Rochester Junior Women's Club, one of our past presidents, and our department within the Rochester Junior Club is who brought this to you today. We are part of the Health and Wellness Department. Before we begin with our program, I just want to tell you a little bit about the Rochester Juniors if you don't know who we are. So we are a women's group here in Rochester. We are over 65 years old, and we work with the community. The club is over 65. All right. Thank you for the correction back there. The club is over 65 years old. And we work here in the community to be the extra hands to help different organizations with their community service projects. So, for example, we have coming up in a couple weeks, we're helping OPC with their spring luncheon. So we will help serve lunch, they do a musical. We do a lot of fundraising events. We just finished our spring luncheon, and all the money that we raise goes right back into Rochester. So some of the organizations that we have supported here in the community and helped get started, Crittenton Hospital, Providence, Ascension, Providence, Rochester, Crittenton Hospital, the OPC, the Rochester YMCA, the League of Women Voters, the library here, and the Rochester Community House. So just a few of the organizations that our club has helped start. Each year we donate, and it depends on the year, but pre-COVID, every year we were donating about $32,000 back to the Rochester community. And again, we do, thousands and thousands of community service hours every year. So if you are interested in our club, working with like-minded women, getting involved in the community, doing hands-on projects, back in the back by the cookies and water, help yourself to cookies and water if you didn't get any, is a poster board that shows you some of the great things that we do. And there's also information on getting into the club and becoming a new member next year. We're always looking for new members, and the club ranges in age, the women range in age. You know, we have young women starting their career, we have women who have children, we have women that are grandmothers, we have women that are retired. We have the entire scope of women, and so there are certainly lots of things that we do that I'm sure you would find a great place with us, and we welcome all. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. We're very excited about this program. Bethany Perry, our speaker, was a former member of the Rochester Junior Women's Club. She is the CEO and founder of Whole Life Healing Centers. And Bethany's going to do her introduction so that I don't totally mess it up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, and thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's going to help me. I caught a cold from my grandchildren, the delight of grandchildren. They pass things on. So last week I caught a little cold. I'm fine, I promise. But I have not overly practiced this because I want to save my voice for speaking. So I'm Bethany Perry, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about mindfulness tonight and ways that we can bring mindfulness into our life. And before you get too confused, I am the president and founder of Whole Life Healing Collective. That's my personal business. That's BethanyPerry.com. I'm just going to help you. It's confusing. I am the founder and teacher mostly of Whole Life Healing Coach. So I train coaches and certify them to become a coach. And I'm a founder of Whole Life Healing Centers, which is the nonprofit, which is how I got invited to this, because Rochester Junior Women's Club, one of the nonprofits that they chose to give money to this year is Whole Life Healing Centers, and we serve those suffering from trauma. And that's a big umbrella. Pre-COVID, it was veterans, abuse, and human trafficking. Since COVID, it's been Oxford. It's been a lot of trauma that the pandemic has brought in many people. So my work is based on the 4 pillars of wellness, and that's the, okay, can you hear? I'll try to, not well? Okay. Just tell me. I'll try to speak up. I'm usually really good at it, but, is that better? Okay. So the health of your brain and your mind, the health of your body and your life, your life and your emotions, your body and your nourishment, how you nourish your body, and your soul, your spiritual health, whatever that is to you. That's the foundation of all of whole life healing, of living a whole life healed. Okay, so let's get into understanding the benefits of mindfulness. Because to create the habit of mindfulness, it's essential to understand the benefits of it. So we'll just look at some of the benefits that mindfulness brings. It reduces stress and anxiety. It improves focus and productivity. Enhances emotional regulation. Promotes better sleep. Who could use that? Anybody struggle with sleep? Yeah, it's pretty common. Boosting overall well-being. Okay? So I'm gonna look back and forth between my notes. I apologize. My goal is to empower you and to engage you in the idea and to enable you to enhance your life by bringing mindfulness into your life. And because when we have more mindfulness, it enables us to choose the choices that we want to make. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Some of us are, as you learn some of this, some of us are more the kind of people who, when we're at the beach, we just put our toes in the water. Some of us run right out and we're all the way in, and some of us are somewhere in between. It doesn't matter where you are. It's that you begin is what matters. So who here has an idea of what mindfulness is? Besides what I just shared. Anybody ever practice mindfulness? Okay, you do? Okay. So I'm gonna ask some of you to share what you did for mindfulness and what you think mindfulness is. Okay. Sure. Does anybody want to share what they think mindfulness is or how they've practiced mindfulness?
Mindfulness is to be in a present moment. I feel that, and I try to teach my kids, like whenever they are eating or doing something, like just to enjoy that moment.
Yeah. Mindful eating is a beautiful practice. It's something I love to teach. Tony, do you want to share? No? Okay. Nobody has to share, okay? I won't, but thank you for sharing that. It's really true, and it's a great practice to teach our children. Especially busy ones, if you can, right? If they'll hold still long enough. So the importance of mindfulness in our lives is it can change the trajectory of our life by changing our thoughts. Because our thoughts have everything to do with how we live and what we choose. So let's talk a little bit about how we create the life we experience and how we experience it. So we create the life we're living. And before I go any further, I want you just to look around the room and notice the ceiling, the walls, the chair, people's clothes, glasses, shoes, the tables, all of everything we see. If it wasn't heaven made, whatever you believe a higher power made, it was created by man, woman. And where did that come from? It came from a thought. we create our life every single day. We don't think about it, but now that you think about it, is it a little scary what your thoughts are? Sometimes it is for me, right? Because we forget. 14% of the time, people who are very mindful are mindful. The rest of the time, we're not. How many of you drove here and remember driving? Like, remember the drive? Anybody just come here so often that you don't really remember the drive because your mind was elsewhere? It's pretty normal, right? Especially when you go home. I've gotten lost being unmindful, so to speak. My mind was elsewhere. So we allow the thoughts we have. Well, that's something to really think about. We allow them. And the same thoughts always lead to the same choices. And the same choices lead to the same behavior. And the same behavior leads to the same experiences. And the same experiences produce the same emotions. And these emotions drive the very thoughts, the very same thoughts, which makes for a very mundane, same life in my world, right? Does anybody ever think about the fact that you're creating your life by your thoughts? Have you thought about that before? Yes? No? I see some no's that nobody wants to say it. It's okay. So our thoughts have power in our life, and if we want to create change, we want to redirect our thoughts. So how do we do that? We hear about it. Perhaps you've heard about change your thoughts, change your life, right? But we try it on, and then we find ourselves right back in the same thought patterns. There are reasons for that go on in the brain. How many of you have tried to change your thoughts and not necessarily been successful? Anybody? I mean, for sure, me, right? And there's a lot of reasons for it, and we're going to talk about some, and I'm going to give you some ideas of how you can work with yourself. But one thing to know is the left brain, it's always talking. So I'm a neuroscience geek. Your left brain, you're going to start hearing it right about now, because you're going to start hearing it talk like, oh, yeah, my left brain is always talking. It doesn't always tell the truth. It lies to itself. It argues with itself, right? You ever argue with yourself inside your head? It's like, oh, I'm this. No, I'm not. Like, right? And nobody even hears it except you. It's kind of crazy how our brains work. And now that I mention the left brain, I want you to really begin to pay attention to your left brain. Because your thoughts sculpt your brain, and the subconscious is a sponge. So the subconscious mind is like a sponge, and it will believe anything you tell it. It will believe the lies that the left brain say. So there are things, when you hear some of the woo-woo statements, and I kind of expand my world, but if you hear some of those statements that you might think are a little bit woo-woo, like what you think about, you bring about. Have you ever heard that? If you tell yourself you're fat over and over again, pretty soon the conscious and the subconscious need to find congruency. Because if there's incongruency in the brain and in the body, one's going to win, and it's usually the subconscious, because that's where we live 86% or more of the time. So we want to really pay attention to what we say to ourselves and pay attention to our thoughts. What are you saying? So does anybody love neuroscience in here? I can give you some neuroscience stats. Okay, I'll just give you a little. I'm a neuroscience geek, so I can't help it. But neuroscience has revealed, it's the study of, it's not just the brain, it's the whole nervous system. Okay? And it has revealed that mindfulness practice can lead to changes in the structure and function of the brain. So the gray matter, there's more connections in the brain. You're a lot more calm. And the prefrontal cortex, our talking, thinking brain, the part of our brain, the very front of our brain that makes us different than all other animals on the face of this planet, gets thicker and is utilized easier through a mindfulness practice. And it doesn't have to be hours every day, okay? Just if you're starting to get worried about that. And it's been shown to increase activity in the insula, which is a region where there's self-awareness and emotional regulation. And it also helps with the activity in the amygdala, which is involved in processing fear and anxiety. And the last 3 years, I think all of us have had a fair amount of fear and anxiety. I don't think anybody has been exempt on this planet. So it's important to listen to what we say. And this is the exercise, and it's not going to seem like a mindfulness exercise, because who thinks of that position when they think of mindfulness? Or breathing, which is super important, and it's great to do. But I'm going to have you do an exercise, and if you don't have a pen and paper, it's okay. If you do, you can get it out. I'm going to talk you through this. Who can think of 1 to 3 negative thoughts that you tell yourself on a regular basis? Yeah. Who can't think of something? You can't think of anything that you tell yourself? So this is rare. I usually see 1 to 3 people maybe, depending on the size of the room. Now, it's likely that you do say some negative things unless you're a very good mindfulness practitioner. But it doesn't, a lot of times we're not aware of what we're saying to ourselves. So I don't know where you fall in that, and that's amazing if we can get to a place where we don't have negative thoughts.
So let me be clear, it's not that I don't have negative thoughts, it's that I don't have consistent, like, okay, you are this, and that's a negative thought that consistently appears. But like right now, there's an opportunity that's presented itself, and my negativity is saying, no, I don't think you're qualified for that. But that's the situational thing.
Yeah.
So,
And
you know, I'm not a master at it. I can certainly, but, you know, not a regular occurring dialogue.
which is great, and you can get there. You can all get there if you're not there yet. It takes time, and it takes reframing, which is something that we're going to do. So as you think about, I want you to just choose one of the negative thoughts. Anybody want to share some of their negative thoughts? Okay. I'll share I have a whole list. I work on it all the time.
I'm not exercising as much as I want to.
Oh, I like how you said that. Because we don't shit on ourselves, right? Anybody else want to share a negative thought that goes through their head? Maybe they're hard on themselves.
It's not a thought per se, but it's like second guessing yourself. Did I do that right? Or should I have done it this way?
Yeah. Second guessing yourself is a really big one. Because then it's like, do I trust myself? Am I okay? Was that anybody else? So when I first started this, I'll just share this so that you can then learn because we're going to go through the process of what you can do at home with those thoughts as they come up. When I first started this, it was in the mid-'80s. And one of the things I used to say to myself all the time was I was stupid. I would always say, oh, Bethany, you're so stupid. And, in my head. I didn't say it out loud. Nobody knew, right? And I raised 5 children, and I used to bake pretty much every day, if not several times a day. And one day I dropped an egg. And I was working on this. I dropped the egg, and there it was. Whew. Oh, Bethany, you're so stupid. And I paused, and I'm like, wait, okay, how do I reframe this? So the reframe, this is the exercise that you're going to do. Is it true? Well, yeah, I just dropped an egg. I'm stupid. Well, is it really true? Yeah, dropping an egg really doesn't have much to do with intellect, does it? Who would I be without that thought of thinking I'm stupid? Now, I'm not conscious that I think I'm stupid. I didn't even know I had that thought. I didn't know I was saying it to myself until I started working on thinking about what my thoughts were. And knowing who I would be without that thought, well, gosh, I might feel more confident. I might not second guess myself, right? I might feel better about myself. Whatever the answer is, and there's no right or wrong answers, okay? It can be, is it true? Is it really true? It can be yes, yes, no, no, yes, no, no, yes. Doesn't matter, right? And then how can I reframe it? You want to reframe it into a positive statement. You want to keep the knots out. I should not tell myself I'm stupid. What you want to do is come up with a statement, and sometimes it takes a while to come up with a statement. Come up with a statement that's the opposite, that brings you to a positive place. So when the thought, oh, I'm so stupid, actually, you're intelligent. Something, fill in the blank, just happened. Let go of the feeling. Whatever it is that serves you, and sometimes you have to think about it. When I work with my clients, I will help them come up with ideas if they get stuck, and then we tweak it so it works for them. And now the next thing you're going to want to make sure that you do is write it down. And put it, like I put all my reframes in my phone. You might work on it for 15 minutes. I've worked on reframes with the client for 15 minutes, and then I'll email it to them and say, write it down, put it on a sticky note, wherever you are, make sure that you have this, because when it comes up, this is a pattern in our brain, right? It's like a superhighway. It's like I-75 without any orange cones, if that ever happens. And so that superhighway in our brain, that's just what it does. And if we're going to interrupt that, if we're going to take the railroad track and switch it over to the other track, we're going to forget what it is we spent 15 minutes on, or 2 minutes. So, right? So I put them all in my phone once I work on them. I put them in my phone. I have them on sticky notes depending on where I'm going to be. I have a file on my computer, so if I'm at my computer, I can just pull it up if the thought comes. And then in time, it stays with you. And then because our brains are wired to negativity, does anybody know why? It's a protective mechanism. I mean, when you think of our ancestors, they had to remember what snake did what, right? They had to be on the protective, and they had to worry about it. And to stop worrying about it, they were geared and wired to protect themselves, to be safe. And so that's just part of our circuitry, but we can change it. That's the cool thing. What we know about the brain now, we can change the brain. So I gotta make sure I'm on the right slide. I don't know what number I am. Okay, so we can't create a new future if we are living in the past. It's simply not possible. So a lot of times, this is a really important concept, because we're every age we've ever been. There might be something that happened to you when you were a young child, and you don't know that it's still bothering you, but it's still in the nervous system. So this is where neuroscience comes in. The polyvagal, has anybody heard of polyvagal theory? I won't go into it too much because it's too sciencey probably for most people's liking. But our nervous system is connected through the brain, right? Our brain is in charge of the nervous system. And it sounds woo-woo, but this is really science. Let's say there were two kids, and they were both going out for a bike ride. They're 4 or 5. They're learning how to ride a bike. I don't know, my son was really little when he learned, even 6, whatever. They're learning how to ride a 2-wheel bicycle. One child falls off. The other child falls off. One gets up, starts riding again, never thinks about it. The other one gets up, never gets back on a bike again. We look at that and go, what's wrong with that kid? But really, it's not so much what's wrong with that kid as what's happening for that child in that moment. There's lack of capacity. Maybe we're just super tired. Anybody experience the inability to deal with certain stressors when you're tired? When you've got a good night's sleep, it's a lot easier, right? And so when we recognize that about our brains, and we recognize that our past is always showing up in our present, and some of that is great, because we are who we are. But some of it, if anybody have patterns that show up over and over, and maybe you've been to a therapist, maybe you've been to a coach, maybe you've worked so hard on this certain pattern, and you're like, what the heck? Why does this keep showing up? Why do I keep doing what I don't want to do? Anybody? Am I the only one in the room? So that is this. When we keep doing what we don't want to do, come on in. Come on in, don't be shy. Come on in. Have a seat. When we want to, let me see where I am with notes, because I'll go on forever. That's why I have notes also. When there's something that hasn't been resolved in our past, it stays in the body and it lives in the nervous system. And it may sound woo-woo, but it really is science. And so as we begin to look deeper into our thinking patterns, I want to ask you a question. Is your mind full, or are you mindful? Because there's a difference, right? So for many of us, we feel like life is rushing by. I know I said this past weekend, I feel like it's already almost fall. Because the minute spring is here, it's busy and summer just goes whoosh. And the older we get, the faster time goes. Anybody else experience that? Yeah. And for kids, their summer is, years long. But this can leave us feeling overwhelmed. When life goes by really fast and we're trying to get things in and fit them in, it can leave us feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and disconnected from ourselves, from our values, and yes, the thoughts that we create. Remember, we're creating every single thought we have. Does that sit okay with people? I didn't like that when I was first told that. When I first learned this concept that I'm creating all the thoughts, I'm like, wait, what about the thoughts I don't want? Well, yep, you're creating those too. Wait, how do I not do that? So many times we avoid some of those deeper thoughts because they're not comfortable. And so we don't want to feel them. We just want everything to be fine and dandy. So we avoid them. And this is where the denial system can come in. And the denial system, our ability to deny things, particularly if there's lots of things going on, right? During the pandemic, most of us had to take advantage of our ability to have a denial system in one form or another. And that is not political. That is your brain. Okay, and it's important. We need it. But then it's also important to go back and revisit those things that we couldn't handle because they're still there. And if they're still there and we don't go back and address them, they show up in our future. And it might be something easy, and it might feel like it's related. It might be something that seems very disconnected. It doesn't really matter, right? We're all practicing being ourselves every single day. Yeah, we want to be the best you we can possibly be, right? So I'm just going to lighten it up just a little bit and go through this pretty quickly to just talk about what is the practice of mindfulness. Some small ways to begin. One is just to start your day with mindfulness. Now maybe it's meditation, maybe it's prayer, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's just sitting down and looking around the room and having gratitude for all the things that you have in your life. Not what you don't have, but what you do have. Maybe it's listening to your thoughts and reframing them. Just one thought a day. Because often we're not telling ourselves the truth. Here we go. Now your brain can only handle 3 hours of solid work before it is exhausted. Your brain takes up more reserve and more energy than any other part of your body. And so our brains need a break. Call it a brain break. Maybe you get up and walk around the room if you're working. If you've got a really big project and you don't want to stop working, you will work more efficiently if you take a brain break. Just hydrate, walk, talk to somebody, take a few breaths. Changes your overall well-being. Practicing mindful listening. Now this is always a really tricky one. We all think that we listen really well. Who thinks that they are a good listener? Most people think they're a good listener until we aren't. Until we're, maybe it's our spouse, maybe it's a friend, and we want to get our point across. But wait, right? And they want to tell us something, and we're not really listening. We only hear a little bit, and then we get our words in edgewise, right? It's time to just take a breath, pull back, and say, well, I love this person in front of me. Because usually we don't mindfully listen to the people we care about the most, right? Because it's safer, believe it or not, to do that. It's important to practice mindful listening and bring that into your life. practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself and treat yourself as you want someone else to treat you, and as you treat other people. Anybody here have trouble with self-compassion? Caring about themselves? Yeah. And a lot of times we think it means we're overindulgence, and we're going to go get a massage, and then we're going to go to the spa and do this, and then we're going to go. Now, maybe that is practicing self-compassion for you. A massage for sure is compassionate for my body. But sometimes we can move from self-compassion to indulgence and we're still not addressing the compassion that we need. We're still avoiding the need. It's just something to think about. But we want to reduce our stress. Okay. So some of the things, I just want to mention a few things that we probably aren't mindful about. Who has a morning routine? I know I do. Who gets out of bed on the same side every day? And I don't have anybody in the way. So, except dogs, maybe. But they're little. I can move them aside. Who gets up and does the same thing every day, kind of in a total routine? Yeah. So I want to encourage you, just give it a try. If you don't have somebody on the other side of the bed, maybe sleep on the other side of the bed. So you get up on the other side of the bed. If you sleep with someone, switch sides. See what happens. Get up in the morning and instead of, immediately, most people get up, go to the bathroom, go downstairs or down the hall and make coffee or tea, hot water, whatever your routine is, do something different. Go a different way to work. Or the next time you drive somewhere, when you go home tonight, drive home a different way, if it's not too rainy, right? Because you don't want to get confused in the rain. That is so good for our brains. It's called a brain interrupt. It's healthy and it brings more mindfulness to you. We do not have to mindfulness and sitting down, I love to meditate, okay? But mindfulness can be writing down a reframe. Mindfulness can be paying attention to the whole journey when you're driving somewhere. Mindfulness can be, okay, I'm going to have some lemon water before I have my coffee this morning. And that can, like for somebody who loves coffee as much as I do, that can feel like a real drag. But at the same time, when I'm mindful about the warm water and the lemon, it's really pretty delicious. And then I can enjoy the moment because as, I'm going to blank on his name now. Some of you will know. But we only have now. That's all it ever is now. It's always now. It's now, and it's now again. And it will always be that way. Yeah.
I'm just curious, if you're used to putting your clothes out at night,
Oh.
and you don't do that, isn't that really going to mess you up?
Well, let me ask you. Is that this is a good. This is because practicing mindfulness is very individual. I can't give what everybody in here is going to have a different recipe. Would that mess you up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I don't recommend doing that, right? Because you don't want to mess yourself up. What I might recommend is, where do you put your clothes when you?
I have my desk chair. I lay everything kind of over it, unless something's hanging up, and then I hang it. It's in the closet. I open the closet, and it's
Okay. So maybe, and this is just an idea, because the last thing you want to do, especially if it's a nighttime routine, you don't want it to interfere with your sleep and cause you stress, right? That's the last thing we want mindfulness to do and interrupt patterns. So you could plan what you're going to wear and just not put it out. Or you could put it in a different spot. Now, I might forget where I set it, so that might not be an answer for you. Maybe that's just a really good routine that works for you. Keep it. You don't have to touch it. Okay? Because we don't want it to bring us stress. That's what we're trying to get rid of. Okay. Any other questions on this? So John Kabat-Zinn, I'm not going to go over this too much, but John Kabat-Zinn, he's really the father of mindfulness in the U.S. And these are his 7 mindfulness attitudes. Beginner's mind, get out of bed on the other side, right? Like that kind of, I've done this before, and it's fun to do, but it's when you wake up, it's confusing. It's like, wait, where am I? Right? Like if you're in a hotel, sometimes that happens. It can happen in your own bedroom. Acceptance, right? Accept, trust. I'm not going to go into this because I have more. Non-judging. This is a big one. Non-judging. Who here is good at not judging? I'm just going to sit down now. We all do it. It's human nature. And so can we not judge ourselves for judging and just say, oh, I just judged somebody. I'm sorry about that. To yourself, even if you don't say it out loud because you never said it out loud in the first place, right? How many times do you drive down the road? I'll tell you a story. This is the problem with talks. I have to tell stories about myself. I used to drive down the road when I was younger, and people would make me angry, right? Because there's crazy drivers. I lived on the east side, and there's a really crazy drivers when you drive close to Detroit, as most of us know. And I would flip people off. They'd make me mad. They'd cut me off, and I was probably the crazy driver. Quite honestly, I've slowed down a lot, and so I would flip people off, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta stop doing that. It's really not very nice. I need to be nicer. So I thought, okay, I'll be nicer. I started blowing people kisses, but inside I was still flipping them off. It didn't change anything inside of me because they don't care. They don't even know, right? So then I had to say, all right. I started making up stories. Remember, the brain lies to itself. The subconscious believes it. So I started making up stories. Well, oh my gosh, that person is in such a hurry. Somebody is at the hospital. Their wife's going to have a baby. They want to get there. How much more grace am I going to have for that person? A ton. I'm going to slow down and let them in front of me. Right? Or they didn't know. They didn't see me. It was an accident. All the storylines that you can make up about a crazy driver out there, it takes away road rage. It gives you calm. It gives you grace. Energetically, you're sending out a way different message than when really I was just, giving the finger. Honestly, in my mind, right? That's never happened to anybody here. I know. I'm the only one. Letting go, right? Letting go of needing to control people on the road. Letting go of caring how other people drive. Unless it's dangerous to them and to others. Patience. I'm just going to let that one sit right there. Bring patience into your life. How does that look? What does it look like for you? I know when I was raising 5 kids, there were a lot of days I thought I was patient when I really wasn't. But, sometimes, like that little kid who fell off the bike and didn't get back on, they didn't have the capacity to get back on. There were days when I was raising my kids, I didn't have the capacity to be any more patient than I was. And that's where grace comes in. We're not perfect, right? We're never going to be perfect. Every single day you're creating yourself with your thoughts. There's never been another you, and there never will be again. So it's really actually pretty cool. And non-striving. You get to invent yourself and reinvent yourself. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the brain, and then I think I leave it out for the rest of the time. But the brain, so this is a SPECT scan. I think you said there's I studied with Dr. Daniel Amen, and these are his, this is one of his images, and it's grateful. This is the same person. This is the underside of a brain, and this is when the person is feeling grateful and being imaged, and this is the same person who's feeling hateful. Now I want you to notice in here there's like more holes, quote unquote holes in the brain, how they're different from this side, and like even up here, the prefrontal cortex, or just the lower part of the prefrontal cortex. The reason is there's not holes in the brain, but there's less blood flow. And when there's less blood flow, think about how your brain fuels your entire body. If your brain is not working right, you're not working right. And we can see pictures of it in the same person's brain. You can see all kinds of things. You can see anger, you can see addiction, you can see stroke, you can see PMS. I'd love to show that to an all men's group. Because at least when I was younger, it wasn't a thing. They used to poo-poo it, right? Till you see it in the brain. But it's important to understand that what we think about becomes our brain. We get to control this. Okay, so identifying and overcoming obstacles. There may be some challenges that prevent you from cultivating mindfulness. Anybody think of something that might pop up here that might stop you from being mindful? You're sick. Yeah. You're sick. What else? Yeah. Time. Time is usually the big one. It might be lack of time. Right? Because we think, oh, I don't have time for that. I was having a conversation before. I don't have time for that, so therefore I'm not going to do it because I can't get it all done. What if you spent 1 minute? I literally, every day at noon, my alarm goes off. Or at 11:45, my alarm goes off, and I move into mindfulness for 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Once a day. It's crazy how it can change you. Who doesn't have 90 seconds? We might have difficulty concentrating, right? In that 90 seconds, it might not be a good time. My brain might be really somewhere else. That's okay. I'll just reset my alarm for when it's going to be a good time. Resistance to change. Human nature. Who likes to change? Yeah. That's perfect. That's a perfect response. So we can think we like to change, and we do like to change, right? Some of us are more, do you like to run and jump in the water? I mean, water may not be the good example, but yeah. So sometimes, the person who likes to jump out of an airplane, the person who likes to jump off the end of the dock more than just stay on the edge of the shore, right? That's me. That's kind of an impulsive thing, honestly. But when we resist change, we can like those things and still resist change, right? Because change is not easy. Why do you think that it's not easy? Yeah, fear. Yeah. And what happens when we're fearful? When we become fearful to one degree or another, the prefrontal cortex, so when we move into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that whole list, the prefrontal cortex turns off like a light switch. And we're no longer functioning from our talking, thinking brain. We're functioning from our midbrain or our subcortical brain. Which is why when we choose to fight, flight, freeze, we're not choosing it consciously. It's not with this part of our brain that's making those choices. So it's really good to just notice if you're resistant to change, and then begin to notice some of the reasons why. If you're not feeling safe, if you feel afraid, address that. Address all those pieces. Find all the dominoes, pick them back up so they're standing. Negative self-talk is really big, guys. And as you think about it, you're going to hear more. I've been working on this literally since, I think, 1983 is when I started. I still have negative self-talk. Now, I don't beat myself up. I don't hate myself. I'm way better than I used to be with negative self-talk. But I usually am working on 3 to 5 reframes every single week. Because it's just normal. It's just what we do. And external distractions. Right? So let's turn. There we go. Okay. So this is a quote. I'm going to pull my notes here and see what do I have to say. So what I want to do is help you now take some of the things that we've been talking about, and I'm going to pull a few more things in. How do we take mindfulness and understanding what it is and the power of our thoughts and choices and move to create that purposeful life that we desire? Because we all have a life that we desire, right? How do we create it? It doesn't look the same for everyone. Some people are going to get their clothes out and get them ready the night before, so it doesn't mess them up in the morning. That's a good habit, right? That's a good thing. We all, every single person in this room, see the world differently. We can all look at this slide and we're going to interpret it differently. We're going to feel differently about it, even if we all loved it or don't love it. Because no two of us are the same. So the content of your character is your choice. Day by day, what you choose, what you think, and what you do is who you become. Sound easy? No, it doesn't to me anyway. Sometimes it sounds easy, but when we really get down to the brass tacks, it's not so easy. So we all know how we often choose the things that we don't want to, right? We talked about that. I want to make a choice and I don't make it. What's up with that? Like, how many of us are hard on our body? While there are many things that we can not choose about our bodies, we can choose how to nourish them. Whether it's food, whether it's whatever it is that nourishes your body. We make those choices ourselves. If we're blessed enough to be able to buy good, healthy food, how many of us always eat it? Yeah. Yes. So it's important to understand that today, I want to be this person today. Make those choices today and you'll build on it tomorrow, every single day. So now I can talk about just this quote for a really long time, about in many different ways. I want to bring in, this is a book called The 4 Agreements, and it is, I forget the Toltec religion. Took me, I'm a Christian, you don't have to be a Christian, like I'm not here to talk about your faith, but it took me about 7 years before I read this book. I had many people give it to me, and every time I pick it up, I'm like, I don't know, this book doesn't resonate with me. Until I finally read it. It changed my life. These 4 agreements, take a picture if you want. If you want copies of any of these slides, just, you can email me. I'll send them to you. Be impeccable with your word. Don't make assumptions. We're going to talk about how to blend this with mindfulness. Don't take anything personally. Ooh, that's a big one, yeah? Always do your best. And today, your best might be better than your tomorrow's best, or today might not be as good as tomorrow's best. Because what's going on? I don't know. Did you sleep? Just that all alone will impact us, right? So I want to help you incorporate the 4 agreements. I just want to remember my little side notes. And bring these concepts so that we can empower moving into mindfulness and the keys to cultivate and create an intentional, purposeful, fully lived life, the life that you desire to live. Creating a mindful lifestyle. So I call it grace, because we have to have grace for ourselves to make any change. We have to have grace, right? Because otherwise, if we trip up, what do we say? If you mess up. Anybody have a comment that they say to themselves? When they know they're trying to do something and you screw up, oh God, I screwed up again. Anybody say that? There it is again. Awesome. Just like Thomas Edison, is it 9,999 times he learned how not to make a light bulb? Right? We can bring that into our own life. Be impeccable with our words. Speak the truth to yourself and to others. Be honest and use integrity. And stay away from harmful language. Language that harms other people. Like maybe shooting somebody the bird when you're driving down the road. That may not be out loud word, but that's kind of a word, right? Cultivate mindfulness. Pay attention to your thoughts, to your feelings. And all our feelings aren't going to always be good. That's okay. Pay attention to them and don't judge them or attach yourself to them. Notice them. Just let them float around you. What can you do for yourself in that moment? Now this one can be pretty tough. Don't take anything personally. Anybody have an example in their mind? You don't have to share it. I'll share one, unless you want to share it, where someone said something, especially now with texting, right? You ever get a text and you assume they mean something and then you respond to it and then the person comes back and you're like, wait, what? And then there's this whole thing because we assumed someone meant something instead of just asking, right? It happens to all of us, whether it's texting or any other subject, right? We want to know that other people's actions and words are a reflection of their own thoughts and beliefs, not a judgment of your worth. Because if I'm driving down the road and I'm flipping somebody off, does that really have anything to do with that other person? No. That speaks to who I am. Right? Being a smart aleck and blowing them kisses instead, that still speaks to who I am. So I need to change that, right? So I did. Really, I did. It took me a while to change that one. But I did. I was proud of myself when I finally got over that. Now I just let everybody drive by me. Practice non-judgment, right? So I had to practice non-judgment to be able to accept the fact that I was like that. Then I could change it. Accept yourself and others without criticism and give up comparing yourself. Because remember, there's only one you. You get to be you and nobody else does. And that's exciting. At least it can be. Don't make assumptions. Seek clarity. Understand through open communication rather than assuming you know what somebody's thoughts or intentions are. This is really important, and you know what? It's not hard. It's really not hard. We may make an assumption. It's easy to open our mouth and be upset, assuming that's the reaction. But how much better might it be if we pause and say, what did you mean by that? Am I understanding this correctly? Can change things for you. Be present. Cultivate it. Cultivate presence everywhere you go. Pay attention to people that you're talking to. Pay attention to people that are around you. How many times are you in the grocery store and you have no clue, and maybe this just happens to me. It's like you're going to run into somebody because you're somewhere else, but you're really in the grocery store, right? It happens all the time to me. I need to be more mindful in the grocery store. I got to put that on my list. Focus on the present moment, because that's all we have. Making a to-do list, hurrying, when we are hurrying somewhere, I got to hurry, I got to get there, we likely take more time and a lot more stress that is not good for our body than if we just think, okay, I need to get moving, but breathe through it and just move and get it done. It'll shock you how you'll be able to I'm good at, thinking I have to hurry up somewhere. Always do your best. Strive for excellence. And don't judge yourself when your excellence isn't the excellence that you wanted it to be. Because if it was your best, it was your best. If a little kid who's 2 or 18 months goes through the alphabet and they skip the letter G and that's their best, do we criticize them? No. We cheer, we get excited, we're happy for them. It's exciting. And let go of attachment. Now this can be where we grip things that I want it just so. It needs to be this way. No, it doesn't. As many people as there are on this planet is as many ways to do something, no matter what the subject is. So let it go. Let go of attachment. Recognize that everything is impermanent, including your body. We're not all going to be here one day. It's the one for sure in life is that one day we're going to leave this world, right? So release the attachment to the outcomes, ideas, and beliefs that no longer serve you. It doesn't mean that you don't desire. It doesn't mean that you don't want to have certain things accomplished in your life, right? We do. We want that very much. But it's important to let go and because sometimes the outcome ends up being better than what we wanted the outcome to be. Has that ever happened to anybody? Yeah. And that's where collaborating also is really a nice way to come in. I had some examples, but I don't want to, I just want to make sure. I think I'm covering pretty, look at me. Normally when I, when I give talks, I pretty much know everything in my notes. I don't really need them. And I normally say it out loud enough times that I know the timing. But because I was saving my voice, I had a talk this weekend and tonight that I said it in my head, but not out loud, which makes a difference for timing. So does anybody have any questions or comments about this list? Because this is bringing in the 4 agreements and mindfulness together. Yeah.
Non-judgment.
Yes.
I have some judgments about politicians, and I don't think they're bad. I don't think my judging them is bad.
Well, and that's a really great, and it's a hot topic, isn't it? I have some judgments about politicians. So what I would say, and it may be deeper than this, because this is what I do with myself, because I do too, right? Like we all do. What do we do with those judgments? What I would recommend is it the person you're judging, or is it the politics that they are implementing or promoting? I separate, this is what I do, okay, because it helps me say, okay, they're a human being. We don't agree. But that human being is separate from the policies that they're implementing and the policies that they're touting, that they believe in. We don't have to agree with that part, because we all think differently, right? We don't have to agree, and we can. My mom and I have this conversation a lot, because she's like, well, it's okay to judge. Like, well, yes, but maybe it's a matter of semantics, and it might be a matter of generation of how we view that word judge, right? But I say it's not my job, this is me, it's not my job to judge the person. I have my own belief systems around politics. We all do. And right now it's so heightened in this world. It's okay to, because it's our country, right? It's okay to have our opinions, but how does that feel to you to take away some judgments? Because there are people I judge that are not necessarily politicians, but there are. And sometimes I just say, I don't care. I'm human. Does that help you at all when you think about non-judging? Right, we do. Yes, we do. We can't sit around and not. Yeah. Correct. But we don't have to judge. It's not our job to judge the soul of the person. Like if you and I disagreed on politics, okay, let's just pretend. I'm not going to judge you for disagreeing with me, but I'm going to disagree with you. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand what I'm trying to that's how I'm trying to separate it. We need to, I mean, if making a decision is judgment, then we're going to make decisions all day, every day. We're going to decide our thoughts because we're creating them. We don't have to agree with everyone, and we're never going to. It's not going to happen. I think for me, it's one of the craziest things that's happening in our world right now is all of a sudden, when did we ever have to agree? Who have you ever agreed with 100% of the time, ever? Besides maybe yourself, and likely not, right? We don't. So it's okay to, I mean, we should have opinions. We want to. It's part of our makeup and who we are as a human being. Does that help separate a little? Yeah.
I'm certainly going to have some judgments about Hitler visiting.
Yeah. He's one person that I don't know how to, I get it. And then I know some people who have done a lot of work around Hitler, and they're like, he was a man too, and he was just messed up. Hurt people. But I have certain opinions about him too. So I mean, that's a big can of worms, but it's a really good question. It's a really good question, and it's a question on how do you think about judging? Because, and I'll just state, like, as in my own personal faith, it's not my job. That's not my job. My job is to do my job. I have my opinions, I have my belief system, but my job isn't to judge. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to look at judgment as not all negative. Judgment is
No.
impression. So I'm judgmental of all that every day. Those little kids are playing get a very true name.
That's a judgment. Yeah. It's not necessarily. I think when we're, especially if you read the book, when you're referring to judging, it's a judgment that's set in stone, and this is this, and this is what I think, and it's a negative, right? We're all, yeah.
Well, and I haven't read the book, but I would think that the judgment, when you're trying to be mindful, is to remove judgments that cause you stress.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
grief.
Yes.
Because, I mean, quite frankly, and I'm sure that many people have done this. There's people that because of the course of the last 3 years, whether it's COVID or politics or whatever, I've just found more peace in just not interacting with those folks. They can do whatever they want, but that's just not going to exist in my realm anymore. And that's my mindfulness choice, so that I eliminate that strife within myself. That's my takeaway on it. Doesn't mean that that's, for everyone, but
There's all different, it's a great example, and there's all different ways and we can change the word, right? Because every generation, too, has a different take on that word. My mom is going to be 88 in June. And yeah, she's amazing. And she's all the time preaching at me, Bethany, you can judge people. And I cringe inside but when we have the conversation, it's the semantics of what that word means to me and what it means to her. And that's, again, we don't assume, we ask. So thank you for the question. It's a big question. And it is absolutely okay to have opinions. Who would we be without them? Right? Anybody else have any comments, questions, thoughts? Yeah.
It all sounds wonderful. It does. But, it's that resistance, and it's that left side of the brain that's constantly talking.
Yeah, so it's so true, right? And that's why I taught you reframing. Reframing is a really good exercise. It's probably one of the first things I teach my clients, often in the first or second session, is working on reframing. And just make that your daily practice. Because I'm resisting. Okay, what am I resisting? And avoid the word why. How is this happening for me is something that I like to ask. Self-awareness, sorry. Be kind to yourself. Practice self-awareness. Observe your thoughts and your emotions. Meaning don't be hard on yourself. Okay, there's that word without judgment. Don't be hard on yourself for what your thoughts or your words are. Don't be hard on yourself if you find yourself resisting. Just take a look at it. And if we ask ourselves, why am I resisting? It keeps us in the loop of why. Right? Because, why am I resisting? Because of this. And this is because of this, and this is because of this, which leads me right back to resisting. And what we want to do is we want to step out of the loop, and we want to look at, how can I look at this differently? What can I do? Who? Where? Stay away from the word why. Not always, but often. So in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end, we get to choose our response to our perceptions. We can change our perceptions or not. I have some hard and fast perceptions. They're not going to change, much to the chagrin of some of my children. But that's the way it is, and that's okay. And we've learned to make peace with it. And that's really the goal, isn't it? Is to create inner peace so that we can offer peace, even when we don't agree. Because I don't know about you. Again, I ask, anybody here ever agree with someone 100% of the time? No. Doesn't make you wrong, though. It doesn't mean your opinions are wrong. We don't know. We're making it up. Everything we're doing, we're creating, we're making it up. We're making up who we are. So if you find yourself in need of a hand or support in working with something like, how do I get through this resistance? I highly recommend you hire a coach. Not only am I a coach, I train coaches, and I know there's a bunch of us who would be happy to help you. And if you don't know what coaching is, feel free to ask. But there's a group of us that would love to serve anyone to help make your life the life that you want it to be. That's really what coaching is about, is to help you get over those hurdles and get through them. So I want to thank you for your time. I know I talked long, so hopefully that it was helpful for you. Anybody have any thoughts, additions that they want to add about how you think about mindfulness? How can you bring it into your life? What do you think will help you? Yeah.
I would resist sharing what we talk about my brain right now. But the reframing, interestingly to me, I've never heard it called that. I just figured out that if I was being stressed about something and I mentally worked out the solution, I had to write it down so that next time I tried to stress about it, it was like, nope, I already figured that out. I just got to look at my piece of paper.
Well, you've got a good nervous system. It does take a lot of practice. It does. It does. And you just get better and better at it, and it gets easier and easier to begin to reframe. Anybody else have thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Would you tell us a little bit more about your training with Dr. Amen?
Yeah, so Dr. Amen now has a health coaching course, but long before that, or a brain life coaching course. Long before that, so this is just a little personal info. One of my younger brothers passed away, and I was living in Nova Scotia. I came home after he died because when I was there, I had a grandchild born, and I had another one on the way. It was pretty traumatic for me. I came home. 8 months after he died, I had a stroke. And in having that stroke, because of the coaching that I had already done and the neuroscience studies that I had already done, I knew I needed to keep my brain busy, because we can create new connections in our brain every single day, right? We have more connections in our brain in one brain than there are stars in the sky. So I was listening to TED Talks. I didn't sleep very much. I listened to TED Talks. I did everything I could, and I came across Dr. Amen. Now, I had known him because 4 of my 5 children have ADD or ADHD. So I'd read his book when I was raising children, but I wrote him a letter and said, I felt called to write him a letter, and they called me and said, we're looking to work with people like you. So I studied with him, and I learned a lot more about the brain, and I learned about SPECT scans, and I learned about how to, he has standardized SPECT scans, and I can offer standardized SPECT scans and help take a look at what a $5,000 scan would give you, and they're pretty right on. I've had a SPECT scan, but he's an amazing man. He is really an amazing man. His work is profound. You're welcome. It's an acronym: Single Photon Emission Computerized Tomography. So that picture of the brain, that was an inactive SPECT scan, and there are active ones that you see more pieces of the brain, so to speak. But yeah, SPECT is Single Photon Emission Computerized Tomography. It's a tomography of the brain. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Anybody else? I want to make sure you all get a chance to talk. Thank you. Yeah.
How to help the kids to bring mindfulness?
Kids can be difficult, especially if they're ADHD. I would say some of the things that you can do with children is practice mindful eating, right? Because it just gets them to slow down. Many of us don't know what mindful eating is. How many of you, like if we're eating finger food or if we're using a utensil, put it down. Don't touch the food, don't touch the utensil. Notice everything in your mouth. Chew it 20 to 40 times. That's what they tell you to do. In school, we were supposed to do that with every single bite we ate for 2 weeks. Chew 40 times. I'm like, I'm either going to fast for 2 weeks. I made it, I think, a day. I know I didn't make it past a day. I'm not sure I made it through 3 meals. It was just too hard. I thought I'd have soup. But for kids, talk about what they're really seriously. It's hard. Just go home and try chewing something 40 times. But for kids, helping them involve all their senses when they're eating, because food is meant to enjoy, right? So with our forks down, we're going to get full faster when we eat mindfully. We will eat less. We just will. And with kids, it's a fun thing to do together. You do practice that, correct? Do you have a specific struggle?
She is a picky eater. She just immediately gets full and but still I want to make her calm sometimes.
Breath work.
Yeah.
Breath work. Just 10 calm, deep inhale and exhale can lower your blood pressure by 10 points. So if you have the white coat syndrome, anybody have the white coat syndrome? If you have the white coat syndrome, what I've asked my doctor, if I feel nervous because I know he's going to take my blood pressure, I'll just say, just give me a minute. And I just calmly take 10 breaths, in and out, just nice and slow. Just pay attention, listen to your breathing. Your blood pressure will come down. 5 to 10 counts. It's worked. It's happened for me. So I know it's true. It's not just me that it's happened to. I want to thank you all for coming, really. And I have a sign-up sheet if you want a free booklet on mindfulness. I'll email it to you. If you want to be a part of my mailing list, go ahead and put your name down. I won't hound you. You can always unsubscribe. But I really appreciate you coming and being such great listeners. Thank you.